Welcome back to the morning show here on the Rise News. I am Adesua Omoruan.
I'm Rafah Yosini.
And I'm Shaito Atigari. Good morning.
Now, the role of infrastructural facilities in economic development can hardly be overemphasized. And globally, it is one of the standards for measuring a nation's greatness and level of development.
Yearly, government do invest heavily in infrastructural development. In Lagos, infrastructural development is a constant and maintenance regulation of these infrastructures that are very key to the state's well-being.
Well, joining us now to discuss infrastructural maintenance and regulation in Lagos State is Engineer FUNSHO Elulade, General Manager, Lagos State Infrastructure Maintenance and Regulatory Agency. Welcome to the morning show. Now, let's go straight into it. Now, at your inaugural meeting with the management staff of the agency, you said that you were going to focus on appropriate public policies that must be developed to attend to the contemporary reality of the asset that you manage. Now, my first question to you is this: what policies should we be focusing on?
Okay, thank you for the question. If you look at the world, best practice, global best practice, there are key policies that needs to be made so that all the owners and operators of the telecom, ISPs, any statutory stakeholders must follow or must adhere to. For example, how they are going to locate their mast or towers, at what setback to building, how they are digging our roads, what is the state of restatement, is it done properly, what is the depth at which they are digging. See, all these things are really important. There are policies that must be formulated, must be regulated, and all the stakeholders must adhere to it strictly.
I like that you're buttoning that because there is also law, and the Lagos State Urban Regional Planning and Development 2010 law stipulates clearly right-of-way setbacks and all of that. But when you find these anomalies, for instance, buildings, shops under high-tension wires or phone towers, you wonder, how did they get there? Regulatory agencies and government agencies authorize these buildings and structures under these places. So is the law faulty, or we are not implementing the law properly in Lagos State?
Okay, you need to understand that there is Nigerian Communication Commission, NCC. They are saddled on the federal level to regulate all these telecommunication companies, but our jurisdiction is the state. And you often find that some of these approvals, you know what it is in Lagos and in Nigeria generally. In the developed world, you would not find people doing things behind, the doors. You have to apply properly. It has to be assessed, and planning permission given. But in Nigeria, you would understand that even some of the places that are allocated for drainages, people are building on them. And these are some of the things that causes, flooding, and a lot of them.
How do you curb that, though? How do we put a stop to that? Because it's one thing to keep on comparing ourselves with the, developed nations. We saw a fire last year that happened in Balogun, and if you look at how those houses are structured, we know that there's something wrong. How does your agency plan to put a stop to these conventional types of buildings that we know are not safe?
Okay, I need to make a distinction here. Lasimra is Lagos State's infrastructure maintenance and regulation. We are not saddled with the responsibilities of, regulating buildings
and the like. Yeah.
We are saddled solely with the responsibilities of, managing, controlling, regulating all the telecommunication companies, internet service providers, anybody installing gas mains, road, infrastructure, water, electricity, those are remits. So for me, I will talk on my jurisdiction, my remit.
Okay. I just wanted to come in there. The bane of all of this has always been the proper execution and implementation of all of these measures and these laws and these regulations. You talked about robust legislation. I mean, what will be the mechanism of your operation as regards getting those robust legislation through the House and then enforcement? And we talk about the second pedal of enforcement, which is quite very, very, very hands-on.
Okay, on my resumption as the GM CEO of Lasimra, the first thing I did was to, look at the laws that had established Lasimra in 2004. And I found out that there are areas that are vague, there are ambiguities. So presently, I'm, revising and looking at the law that established Lasimra. And again...
What are those areas, if we might look at them?
Okay, for example, there is no enforcement and monitoring. And one of the things I did is to establish enforcement and monitoring team that will go out 24/7 and check all the works being done in Lagos State. You often at times, a lot of sharp practices have been happening. I don't want you to misconstrue me. Majority of them comply, to what we have now, what is obtainable now. But some of them, they do their operations out of office hours when we are closed. When they know we can't check them, we won't even know whether they apply for right-of-way or permit to install masts. So for me, I felt that is important. And secondly, I want to automate our process flow, whereby there won't be any physical contact. You will go on our website, you apply there, you fill the form there, we would assess your submissions, the only way, and you can pay there. That's a payment platform as well. The only way where we will have contact is when we undertake joint site inspection. Because if you submit, if you give us your submissions, we need to check that if you tell us you are installing a mast at 20 meters or 50 meters high, we need to be sure it is structurally stable. Otherwise, it must withstand wind load. If we don't check all those things before we issue permits, then we are, putting Lagosians' life into danger. Because if it falls, it can fall on like 10 houses. It will be fatal, life will be lost, and things like that. It's
interesting that you brought in the telcos, because more often than not, what we see is the Lagos residents, I don't want to say Lagosians, Lagos residents at the receiving end of this, where their houses or their shops or whatever it is gets demolished. One wonders if they are sacred cows when it comes to the telcos, because they don't seem to be receiving any of this backlash. And my question really to you is, the Lagos state governments in the past have declared zero tolerance for this flagrant abuse of siting buildings under high-tension wires and the likes of them, and then we see these demolition processes. What are you doing differently? Because I know you've talked about, since resumption in office, you've talked about critical thinking and technology, bringing in technology, but in practical terms, what are you doing differently? Are we going to be seeing more demolitions? Because again, despite those demolitions, we see these buildings on that high-tension wires are rampant.
Okay. For me, Rome wasn't built a day. I think right now, if we want the kind of Lagos we all, wish for, there must be an aggressive, compliance of, taxpayers. You will find out that a lot of people, they will not follow the guidance. They will not build to the required setback. I can remember when I was in Lamata as the Director of Roads and Traffic Management, when we wanted to extend BRT from Mile 12 to Ikorodu. We were even thinking, begging people that, okay, we'll organize a settlement action plan and demolish a building. It's for the development of the state, not even knowing they had built into the right-of-way. It's so unfortunate, because I keep saying this. Yes, I'm a Nigerian, and when you go out there, the planning permission guidance in London will never, you can never go out of it, regardless who wants to, you know, help you or assist you in going out of it, because the person knows he's going to lose his job. However, in the remit of Lasimra, we, on our road maintenance side, you know, because we look at road maintenance as well,
okay,
we need to check whether all the, you know, live tension wires, you know, all the cable, armor cables buried, they are to the required setback as prescribed by law. You know.
I want to come in there real quickly, because increasingly, maybe because of the advancement of technology, we have need for fiber optic cables that have to go under the ground. And the way at which this is being done, we see how it jeopardizes the roads. Is there provision for men of Lasimra to be on ground to be able to check the execution of those projects? And secondly, I want to also talk about individuals that have put their own personal property up for installation of fiber optic cables and masts. You know, that's sort of like a touchy situation. There are people that put their backyard for people to install masts. And there's things we call radiation density, radiation threshold, radiation frequency, and radioactivity interplay, which are hazardous to the health of people. So how is Lasimra having those vital conversations? What's the merit to this?
Well, for me, I mean, and for Lasimra, it's unfortunate because people are not well educated. And when Lasimra was established, it was the advent of, you know, the introduction of mobile phone. Everything is still vague. Even though with what you have said, some report or research said, you know, it causes lung cancer, you know, it causes disability, it causes... But if you look at all the institutes, whether European, London, international, United Nations, there is no concrete evidence.
Including the WHO?
Yeah, including the WHO, that it causes health hazard. There is no concrete evidence. However, we all know that, you know, you have radio frequencies, you know, infrared rays, you know, coming out of the place, which can be injurious to human. What the NCC stipulates, you must not erect any mast lesser than 10 meters to any wall or property. But maybe because of the way the country is, people need income coming in regularly, you know, the telecommunications, they know they pay them yearly, some monthly, quarterly. So for me, it's a way whereby, in fact, I have a litigation as I speak, whereby I had to stop a mast being operational because the guy just said, sorry, where you have erected this mast is injurious to my health, my family. So we have a lot of litigations pending. And again, what I'm doing as the GM Lasimra, I have hundreds of masts that I'm going to decommission. You know, because we are taking a lot of assessments. We've been writing, we are combing the states. We've been writing all the banks that own masts. We've been writing all the telecommunication companies because we need to digitalize and automate the whole procedure.
So decommissioning of this mast, because that's a big punchline out there for a lot of people that are listening to this now. Are they area specific? How are you ready for the backlash and the litigation to the effect of this decommissioning of some of this masts?
Unfortunately, the law established Lasimra, and there's no ignorance in law. So the onus is on them to go and study Lasimra law. And if you contravene the law, then what happens? And this is one thing that the governor, the present governor, is even really looking at. You know, Lasimra wasn't established to make or generate revenue. That is not the primary objective.
Okay, Mr. Elulade, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but we'll have to go on a break. Okay. We'll come back, we'll talk about how all of this, you know, falls in place with the governor's themes agenda. Stay with us, you're watching The Morning Show here on the Rise News.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're still talking to Engineer FUNSHO ELULADE, the General Manager, Lagos State Infrastructure, Maintenance and Regulatory Agency, Lasimra. And before the break, we were talking about the decommissioning of some of these masts and how you have pending litigations. Now, how does Lasimra plan to go ahead and forge this? You're about to land on a point.
Yeah. I mean, our legal department has been busy since my assumption of office, and I'm not going to leave any stone unturned. If you contravene the law, you have to be ready to, take the bullet. Because all these big, giant telecommunication companies, they have the money, so they can buy their way through, but not in Lagos anymore. Everybody must comply with what the law is. As long as you comply with what the law is, that's fine. If you look at Lagos State, it's unfortunate, just go to any skyscraper, like say 10-meter, 10-story skyscraper, you will see how all these masts are littered all over Lagos State. And majority of them, they are not even to standards, because the indicator, the night indicator that must be fixed, most of them don't have. And like I said, the state established Lasimra primarily to cater for the health and safety of Lagosians, where telecommunication, cable mast is concerned. So in the process, if the state generates a certain revenue, so be it. But it is the health and safety of Lagosians.
You talk about the health and safety of Lagosians, but one wonders how aware are they about this, and is Lasimra doing anything in that regard? Because it's one thing to have these laws, it's another thing to enforce them, it's another for the people to be aware of the existing laws. What's Lasimra doing in that aspect? And secondly, I asked you before that break, the master plan of Lagos and the theme agenda of Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, the 6-pillar agenda. How does Lasimra and this plan of yours fall into place with the governor's plan?
Thank you. I like that question that you asked me. The first thing I think is required is to undertake a stakeholders conference. Lasimra has not done that since its establishment. And that will happen Tuesday, 14th of January, next week Tuesday, at Muzon Center. Okay. Because I feel there is the need, for everybody to come around the table, interactive session. We have key people who have been in the industry. We have professors who are, health and, safety related. They are going to deliver lectures. There will be presentation. There will be questions and answers. So from there, we can formulate how we have to, go forward. That's the first thing I think is required. Because if you don't sensitize people, they will not know, and you can't blame them because everybody have different form of activities. And in terms of the agenda of the governor, Mr. Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, you will find out that if you look at that team agenda, the 5 pillars, the only way any government can realize that is to increase its revenue generation. If through Lasimra we can contribute our quota by increasing that revenue, of course, hospitals will be built, roads will be, fixed, new roads will be built, kids will be safe, the city will be safe, and so on and so forth.
I just wonder, how do you plan to increase your IGR and that of the state through Lasimra? If you can enlighten us. Are you going to be taxing people?
No.
Is it for more mass to be put in place?
The law that established Lasimra introduced permits fees and right-of-way fees. What I need to do is to ensure that that is followed strictly. And again, on my assumption, this fees has been set since 2004. When Lasimra was established. How many years? Like
close to 20 years.
20 years. If anybody tells me I should not review that fee, then I don't know what the person is saying. So I'm reviewing all the fees. At the stakeholders conference, people will know how much we are going to charge. Because what we are doing is obtainable, globally. So we are not, if you compare how much Australia, South Africa, London, US, if you compare how much they charge with what we charge now, you know it's next to nothing.
So you're saying you're saying there's going to be a review of the fees. How about like the backlog of it? Because there will definitely be defaulters. And I know that you only recently joined this administration or joined this agency. But what about the defaulters? Is there any plan laid out for those people?
Yeah, the defaulters, the government's hammer is going on them heavily because there is something for you to default and we slam you with a penalty. There's another thing for you to pay righteously, what needs to be paid. So maybe through the defaulters, I'm going to make a lot of money for the government.
All right, so I'll just quickly take you on this. Let's take you on some of the fees. We hear reports that what you're charging for people to be able to even get landlords is quite very high. What would you say about that? So when you're now saying that you'll still have to increase these numbers, a lot of people will look at you and say, what is really happening? And secondly, I want to ask you, coordination among other ministries, because there's sort of other ministries that do this. There's a Consumer Safety Office, that's a federal government arm. Most of these complaints will come to Consumer Rights Council first before they even come to Lasimra. So what is going to be the reporting line? How are you going to work with them? And the fees, it's already high already. And on the 14th of January, you still want to increase them?
Certainly. But I will correct an impression. When people say Lasimra fee is high, that's an incorrect statement. I can tell you authoritatively, compared to what the telecommunication companies are making, it will interest you to know that some of the telecommunication companies makes $1 billion in excess per day.
Maybe we should just tell companies
$1 billion in excess per day.
But should they be charged in relation to what they make? Because if you say that, I'll argue with you by saying betting companies even make $1 billion in excess per day.
But they do.
So should they be charged in relation to what they make, or it should be a fair charge?
But they do CSR. Most of the CSR that these companies, telecommunication companies, say they will do, it is the government that is doing it. I can argue that to any length. And again, if I tell you, there is something called Site Assessment Report, which all states, except 4 or 3 states, don't do. Lagos State is one of them. If they tell me what we are charging in Lagos State is high, Ogun State, per meter of right-of-way, they charge about 2,000. We charge 1,000. So I don't understand when people say we charge a lot. I don't know where that comes from. But when people are in their comfort zone, they've been enjoying that, that fee for 20 years. Oh, come on. Do you know what inflation is from 2004 to now?
Okay, let's quickly
argue on, if you bring that argument, they'll also say on the
I want to make a point.
Because the second question, talking about collaboration with other agencies, you didn't respond to that. And I just wanted to add, apart from those reporting agencies that Rufai talked about, other government agencies such as LABASCA that is in charge of building regulations and the urban renewal plan for Lagos, so to say. Are you working with agencies like that in sighting of this mass? What's the collaboration like?
Of course, the collaboration is solid. We are all government agencies. You don't know what we do when we are in the office. You don't know when correspondence is. For example, I'll give you an example. Ministry of Science and Technology, they wanted to, lay some cables. They still told they wrote us that we have engaged a contractor to go out on there. Okay, you guys, you need to assess. I sent my boys out. So there is that collaboration. But however, we tend to collaborate more with NCC. But on the state level, we collaborate. And you have to understand one thing in Lagos. Lagos used to be the federal government, capital. Federal government has a lot of assets, of which they would not allow the state to touch. So whatever it is in our own jurisdiction, we will do whatever we need to do. But on the federal level, we will still collaborate, we'll synergize, because there's been a lot of situations whereby Lagos State will build a federal government road. You understand? And, the federal controller of works in Lagos we will engage him with Ministry of Works and Lasimra. We will introduce docks. And do you understand? There's always been that collaboration.
Okay.
There has always been. Always.
All right, Rufai, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about that, and I also wanted to talk about, make the point as regards fiber optic cables and in tandem with the realities of the smart city. I mean, you want to talk about through that narrative?
Well, one thing I know is that the government is planning, the present government is planning, you know, and of course I know people have been hearing about this smart city news, but plans are underway. That's all I can tell you. And in addition to that, a lot of private, private companies as well, they are presently laying fiber optics. So, but what I think the government wants to do is to, harmonize and synergize everything together. So you don't find out that people, haphazardly, they go there, dig again, another company will come dig again, so the whole place will just be, will be in a mess. And again, I will quickly point, when they do their right of way, or when they start laying their cables, one thing I'm introducing now is they must give me a comprehensive traffic management. Because often at times you find out that their activities create or exacerbate congestion, traffic congestion.
Yeah.
That will stop. And again, I'm looking at, taking back restatement from all these contractors. Because often at times you find out that all they're interested in is to dig, but to put it back to the, the right state, it's a mess.
It's also difficult, man.
So the plan I have is to, assess some contractors, get them approved, and we introduce them to the company. So once you dig, you have to come to Lasimra, you engage them, we supervise, you put the road in, in a good state. So these are some of the initiatives that we want to discuss on the 14th of January, which is next Tuesday.
And we do hope that from Muson Center, this message will reverberate beyond the walls of Muson Center, because the people need to hear this message. And we have about 20 seconds to go on. I wanted to ask you, how has it been like being the head of this agency?
No, for me, it's been fun because I like challenges.
Okay. Well, we wish you the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right.